Howdy guys, I'm Jason Lewis, and today on the AutoEdits channel, it's all about large Marge. I got a doozy of a video because we're gonna show you how to wire a car from scratch. Now, I'm gonna show you the parts, some of the tools to use, a couple of different techniques, and we're gonna finish this thing off. And I'm kind of nervous because at the end of today, I'm actually hoping to hit the engine start button and see what happens. I mean, there's a lot of things at play here, so we'll try it at least. So let's get busy. Now, as I bring you into the garage, you'll see it's a disaster zone. I had it super clean after the garage makeover and for the last few projects, but this is a big project. So I don't want to kid you guys that this is a easy thing to do. It's a big thing to do. It's not hard, it's just big, and it just takes some time, patience, and planning. So you can see that the workbench here is a bit of a disaster, but that's okay. We're in the final stretch. So let me get you some tools laid out and I'll show you what I use to do this install. All right, so here are the basic ingredients that I use to wire the car. Now, as you guys know, this has taken so long. The whole project actually has taken so long. It's 5.5 years. I just watched that video on YouTube. I'll put a link down in the description to the video where I actually rolled this into the garage and yanked the motor out and started this. It's 5.5 years ago. That's a long time. So it's tough to have a project spread out that long. Things happen, I've lost stuff, I need to reorder stuff. So it's kind of dramatic, but here are the basic ingredients. I've done videos on different things, so there might be some redundancy, but bear with me. So as you guys know, I went with the Painless wiring harness. Now I went with the Painless Pro Series wiring harness. Now, if you guys watched the wiring preview video I did several months ago, maybe a year ago, yikes, I go into great detail onto this kit and why I chose the Painless stuff. I've put it on cars in the past. I put some Painless, the rocker panel, the trail rocker stuff in the Jeep, and I really like the quality of product. So I'm a huge fan of the brand. So I chose that. Now here are some options. I chose the Pro harness. Now the Pro harness from Painless, it's a GM based. So you have to remember what your project is and what fits your skill level and what your intention is with it. So they make, and many other companies make things that fit specific cars, like what they call a direct fit wiring harness. Now I went with the Pro harness, which is GM based, so that has GM color codes, and it's set up, and I'll get into some of the details of how that differs per brand in a bit. It gets really tricky, and you have to just be aware. So if you're kind of new or not sure and you just want to freshen up your car and just have that peace of mind of new wiring, get the direct fit. They make a Ford harness that would actually work in this thing, so you literally would have the same color codes, the same scheme. Okay. Girl. All right. So let's run through the basic tools that you're going to need to do this wiring harness. It's not that much, it's not that hard, but these were the things, and these are the things that I recommend you do. Now, you know, obviously the basic stuff: scissors, wire cutters, or dikes as they're called. Someone could tell me in the comments why these are called dikes. I'm just immature. These are actually one of these things that I learned this from working with Finnegan years ago on Roadkill. Flush cut wire cutters or dikes. These things are key. When you cut a zip tie with a pair of regular wire cutters, we're just gonna call them wire cutters for the rest of this video, it creates the sharpest edge known to mankind. I mean, it's so sharp it just cuts human skin easy. Flush cut, what that does is it just literally makes it so that, oh, look at that, it doesn't cut you. It's wonderful. So get these, they're not expensive. I got these at the Harbor Freight for like $3. So flush cut wire cutters or dikes. That is a key for using wire zip ties. So we'll just jump over to zip ties. You're gonna need a bunch of zip ties, big ones, small ones, all of the zip ties, get them. Next up, I have these wire strippers right here. These are just some old school auto strippers. So many weird names for this stuff. Okay, so these things, all I do is use them to strip wires. You could actually use the old school tool like this right here, but I don't, because this is so easy. Watch this. Strips the wires. Make sure you have a good set. This one I invest good money in. I don't remember where I got this. It says Cronus on here. I don't know where that came from. So get a good set of, I like the wire strippers, just makes it really fast. Boom, wires stripped. So wire strippers, I have a combo tool. Now these two tools I ordered from Painless when I got the kit. They actually have a lot of cool things on the website that make your life a little bit easier. So I bought these because it not only has the strippers, a cutter, it also has this part of the jaw right here. Now this is the part of the jaw that's really important. When you're using non-insulated butt connectors, there's another one. It has a little notch, and then you have these jaws here for insulated connectors. And so that's kind of key. Let me do a quick one for you on here. So obviously, next up is, now the Painless kit comes with a miscellaneous set of connectors, and that's really nice to have. You might go augment that. I use a little bit of a bunch of different kinds. I don't have a specific kind. I solder some, I crimp some, depends on what I'm doing. So let me demonstrate a insulated crimp. So you would put your wire inside here. Now since this has an insulation on it, you would use one of the jaws here. That gives you a nice crimp without tearing the plastic. And that's pretty cool. Now on this side, I'll demonstrate one of the butt connectors and using this part of the jaw to create. Now you always want to make sure, I need my glasses. Gosh, so old. So you want to make sure that you put the dimple on the side that doesn't have a split, and then you just put your wire, I'll just try to make sure you guys can see this, inside there, and then do a nice crimp, and that gives you a nice little dimple in there. And you always, here's a tip right now, you always make a good tug on these wires to make sure that that's not coming apart on you. So that's the example of why these are a very important tool in your arsenal here. Obviously the connector, the covered wire zip ties. I used one whole roll of electrical tape on this car, so get some electrical tape. I did all of my soldering in this one with this. Now there's a million different ways. You could do it with a soldering iron, a portable solder butane. This is just a little, this thing has just a refillable lighter filler here, and I did all my soldering with this thing and some old school thin gauge silver solder. And then some Jaws of Life assistance here with some heat shrink on those to protect it. That's the basics. So now to describe the basic spine of the wiring or the skeleton, you know, the nervous system of the car. Most cars have the battery right in the front here someplace in the engine compartment. Now, a lot of us hop up our cars for better weight balance. We move the battery to the trunk. So I did do that. So I'll show you that in a minute. In its place where the battery would live, I have a junction block. So I actually have the battery in the trunk, but I ran a wire down the side of the car and into the engine compartment right here. Then from in here, you could disperse the power that you need into the engine bay and back from the alternator into the battery. So this thing is new since last time I did an update on the wiring of the Mustang. It's MSD6AL, and it's something that I learned I need to run the Holley Terminator fuel injection. I have everything in place, ignition box, dual sync. Now this thing right here gets a sync, like a crank timing off of the cam gear, and then that'll feed the Holley Terminator and hopefully run. The thing has all the fluids in it, so it seems to hold them all. There's no fluid under the floor right now, so that's a good sign. What I wanted to focus on here is that how nice it is to have this bulkhead right here that comes from the battery, and I'll show you the routing of that from the battery to here. To have that stuff here is nice, because I was able to route the direct wire to the battery right to this thing, and then run wiring to a switched power as well. All right, so now let me take you to the trunk, and I will show you the battery mount in the trunk. Now I have a discrete wiring harness here for the Holley Terminator computer system, and then I have a battery plus and a minus right here. Now this was something I've talked about a few times before. You want to run whatever size power wire you're running, run the exact same size ground wire. Ground is really important in a DC car, automotive, automotive systems are DC, which is just a plus and a minus, which means that the amount of amperage and current that flows through the plus must flow through the minus. So a lot of times people would put a dainty little ground wire, put the same. I have 1 gauge wire, plus and minus on this vehicle. And so the minus you see here runs right through the floor, and I just bolted it right to the frame rail. And since this is a unibody car, the frame rail here literally grounds the entire car. If you have a car with a body on chassis, there's a lot of times there's a rubber mounting bushing between the body and the frame, so you have to make sure that you ground both. You have to ground the battery to the chassis and then the chassis to the body. So there's multiple things to keep kind of your eyes on. This car, a unibody car, front to back, it once you ground it to the chassis here, you're good. So I put a few ground straps, ground the engine, of course, to the chassis. That's one of those other things. Then for the positive on this one, I just ran that. I just have that fastened down here so it won't go anywhere. And then that runs over the fender well there. And then just let me show you basically the way I ran that in this vehicle. That comes, so there's the battery back there. I ran the wire up over the fender well into here, fastened it below all of the window movement. It goes under there into this channel right here, which will have a sill plate on it. Then that runs up and in through here, and then it splits right here. I have a bulkhead right here that feeds the inside of the car, and that's what you see here. This is my painless fuse block right here, so I have a fusible link, and then that feeds the actual fuse block here, and then the rest of the car, and then that goes into, see, now I'm going to show you where I routed that. So it's out of the way of all of the suspension pieces, and that's where that bulkhead happens right here and gives us all that power into the engine bay. And that's the basic spine of the plus minus of this car. Now let's go inside and I'll show you the under dash wiring of it. Now, before we dig into too many of the details of what you see here, I know it looks like a mess, but there's actually a plan and a little bit of a system going on here. I really thought this through, and this is where it just gets challenging. That's why I'm saying it's not hard, it's a challenge because it's big and it takes some time to make sure, even though I know this kind of looks messy, but there's a method to this madness. Now, one of the other things inside here, there's another tool tip. Good lighting, like good portable lighting. Like my buddy Chris from Power Stop Brakes gave me these, hooked me up with these 2 Nebo lights, and this one right here, this little portable guy, they're both rechargeable, has been like amazing. So this is the Nebo Tango, love it, get that. And then this thing right here is the star of the show, the Nebo headlight. Both of these rechargeable, super nice. Those came in handy a lot during this install. So good portable lighting, rechargeable, obviously better. Another quick little product highlight that just makes your life a lot easier when you're doing builds or installs, or just even want to kind of update your hot rod. On the Flaming River column and wheel, as you see I have in this vehicle, I saw that they have this cool little turn signal stock with a little switch built into it. And you know what that switch is for? Is to put the high beams, like in these old vehicles, you have that clunky clunk thing on the floor. That puts it there. All I had to do was route a wire down, and then these are the wires right here. So that was a little tricky. I had to put a coat hanger down the column, and then those 2 wires come through the column here, and I plug them right into the plug. Now that just runs right to this little relay right here that I mounted right on the steering support, column support, and that takes the place of that big clunky thing on the floor. So these are the little things that really can help your build or your project vehicle, your old vehicle, just a little bit more modern, a little bit more practical or fun, easy to use. You know, that clunk off the floor, keep it nice and tidy up here. This will all disappear, and then you'll just have this. It's pretty cool, because I want to build a nice dead pedal down there, something that you could really get some leverage on with your foot when you're driving sporty. So with that big clunker down there, you can't. So that's pretty cool. All right, so for the quick tour of how what's going on under the dash here. So now you know the basic spine. So the power comes in, I run it to this little spot right here. So this is the master power to the inside of the car. So you have two main sources of power. You have the power to the engine components and then a power to the under dash and the inside car stuff. So what I have is the fuse block mounted on the passenger side. Most applications that's mounted up underneath there, like the direct fit stuff would fit in the stock spot way up there under the dash. But right here behind the glove box, I just thought it would be cool to mount that there. So I'm going to. So it's my car, I'm gonna do that. As you guys saw this during the different stages of the wiring, where there was just a jumble of wires here, it gets overwhelming. And that's one of those things where you just kind of have to hunker in. There's a saying my grandpa used to use, like, how do you eat an elephant one bite at a time? That's really gross and weird, but the thought process is, like, there are nights that I was just overwhelmed looking at that. I would just sit in here, pick one thing to wire and do it. And it was just good. And I just pushed through. So it was really, really a fun accomplishment. Now, what I have here, so one of the cool things about the Painless harness is that everything's labeled. All of these wires, if you remember the preview video, all of the wires, all of the harness sections are isolated, and they just tell you, like, I routed to go to the tail lights and the license plate light and all of the fuel pump, everything in the back. I routed the wire across here, so that's this harness here, and that runs across up under there, and then that runs down the other door sill, like right here where I have the power wire, the main power wire, I have the rear taillight wires going down that door sill. So it's perfect there, they're tucked away. And then what I did here, and then I'm really proud about, even though it still looks like a mess, and there's a zillion wires, and you know, just remember, it's a big job, not a really hard job, just a big job. I have a lot of other things. I have the GPS speedometer, the interface for the Holley Terminator computer, which is tucked up underneath there, the things that will feed the dash in a minute. You'll see how easy that is. That's literally this blue wire. So what I want to show off now is that this jumble of wires is actually a ready to rock all of this stuff for behind the dash. So this is for my start button, just because I have a hang up. I love start buttons. So instead of having the key start it, I wired this. And then this is one of those weather pack connectors that I just wired in here. And then I actually, to the center panel, have the center panel will go there. Start button lives there. Wired for the weather pack connector. So you see what I'm saying? Make it as easy and think through the process as best you can. This will go to the heating, the AC or the HVAC connections, cigarette or the USB 12 volt power supply, some lights for the dash. The stock headlight switch was a bit of a trick because, like I was saying earlier, the courtesy lights inside here, the ones that run off of this switch here, run off of a positive in the Ford like this, but I like it better in the GM harness. Now, another trick thing that I did here is I actually put a little bulkhead up here on the dash that has some accessories. So I have some grounds here available. I have the courtesy circuit right here. So the yellow or the orange here is the courtesy positive, so I can add as many courtesy lights underneath the dash here as I want in the future, which is nice because it's just accessible here. And then the courtesy minus or the ground to that, and that's the trigger. So now all I did was take the Ford, which had a bunch of switches. Let's see if I can get this out of here. So this is the stock Ford switch. Now the GM ones, you guys may remember those little metal switches, and this kit actually ordered those, but I really wanted to just keep this. And so all I did was, see, the back of this thing has a ton of wires, has 4 wires coming out of it because it's sending positive, and that's just the way the Ford system works. So I just ran the courtesy trigger to that, and that now just acts, and you'll see that activate in a minute. So now that just works on, so when the door is open, it is now grounded and it runs the courtesy lights. You'll actually see those work in a minute. I mounted a couple of LEDs under here just for now. Once we plug in the battery, you'll see. So that's the basics here. Think it through, run one system at a time. I have a bulkhead up in here, similar to this one here with all of my kind of accessories and niceties. Like this one right here is just a 12 volt power supply. So that way I can run anything that needs 12 volt full-time power here. And then these are my other accessories that I have labeled there. Similar, up in here, I have another bulkhead that has all of my different 12 volt full power, 12 volt switched on, This right here is a pretty neat little connector. This guy right here is the one that will attach to my other pre-wired and ready to rock. This is the track rocker. So these will be the activation systems. I have 3 systems ready to rock here, and this one will turn on the car, the EFI, and then the fuel pump. Super overkill here, literally key on would do that. And then that plugs in here. And then I have this cool little thing where the Terminator, the Holly system will actually run fans 1 and 2 through the track rocker, because I looked up in the instructions and it sends signals out this to this, and I'll just run this into here. So that's the plan. That's how you plan and make it fun. Make it good. So basically all of the wires in this are labeled to where they go. So the taillight section goes to the taillight, and it says right turn signal, reverse lamp, all of that stuff. Here is the windshield wiper washers. And in this car, it was a little tricky because the GM just sends low signal, low speed, high speed, and wiper washer pump. And I'm not gonna have a washer pump yet on this, but on the Ford, they have high speed, low speed, high speed, and a park circuit, which makes sure that when you turn it off, the wipers just don't stop wherever they're at. They actually keeps enough power to run through to get them down to the park. So I had to just jump a wire into that and then run a wire to that. That was the only real thing, that and the courtesy lights were the only real conversion things from the Ford to GM in this particular application. So now let's get the dash in and start plugging these things in. All right, dash inbound. Now I have a couple of wires pre-wired here for the gauges. I'm gonna have to see what I can do reach-wise on those, but for now, let's see what we got here and see if all of this pre-planning I've been bragging about worked. Here's another quick tip while I have you here. Little containers are very helpful. This is a hummus container. Yeah, I like hummus. I'm pro with that. And I have stored my bolts to hold the dash in. Likewise, another container to hold the screws to hold some dash stuff in. So that's another little tip for you. All right, let's get a dash in. See what happens. See what fits, doesn't fit. Should fit, I guess. Came out of this car. Okay. Start stabbing bolts in it. Once I just get this secure so it won't guillotine me, I'll work on getting some connections made. It's looking like it's gonna work so far. This is one of those things where I hope this is the last time this dash is going in. All right, so now we should be able to just, this is the first time I'm doing this actually, so this is all in theory and guesses, educated guesses. So the stock headlight plug goes right there. All right, so here's a quick rundown of a standard switch that's in most aftermarket, or kind of, it's the same principle in all cars. So you have your key, you put your key in, and it's in off position, then you have on or accessory, and then you would have start, and that's the momentary. And the back of this looks like this. You would have, and it has little labels here, you would have accessory, ignition, battery, and then start terminals. Now the way that works, your battery, so this would be a 12 volt, and that's how I have it labeled here, a 12 volt source, hot from the battery all the time, there. Then that feeds this thing, and then the key position now activates the rest of these things. Now, a lot of you guys, it's confusing. The starter mechanism on a car is actually very, very easy. You have a solenoid that runs the starter motor, so you really don't have to send a ton of power to that thing. Usually it's a purple wire, and that's why I have that purple wire coming out of the center here. I'll show you that in a minute. And that would go here. And so that purple wire goes right to the starter solenoid. So that's super simple. Once you have the battery, purple wire, starter solenoid. You would have whatever power, whatever accessories here that you want to run accessories. So that would run, and in the painless circuit, it has a pre-wired receiver wire for that. So it actually runs certain things like radio, things like that on that circuit. And then you have ignition, which you could have your fuel injection, your whatever, you know, ignition system stuff there, or also the car on. Now, because in this situation, I am literally just using this to turn on the car, so I have a way to actually lock it. I'm actually only using the two. So I have a 12-volt battery source in, and then accessory here. That's it. How you doing? Come on, get in. There's Pinto. Oh, goodness gracious, get in there. You kind of half-assed that one, Pinto. Gotta go for it. What you doing? What you doing? Got a Pinto drive-by. Next up is the wiper switch here, which I'm using the factory switch because I like this little detail here. And then this is a good example of the lights that I will wire in later so that it lights up all these letters. I just love little details like that. So I need to buy a few more of these since I saved them from the old harness and then promptly threw them all away. Oh, on that note, I threw these away too. So I found a Bronco, Tom's Broncos in, I think Oregon, sells these things. So I bought these things brand new from them. It was 50 bucks for a whole set. So I got the headlight one, the wiper one. It had an ignition one, but since I'm using an aftermarket switch, it didn't count. But there you go, Tom's Broncos sold these things brand new. So that was, saved the day there. Okay, as I was looking at the wiper wire loom here, it kind of hangs down. The more natural approach is down behind the steering column support. So I'm gonna just grab that wire and a zip tie and then just link it to some other wires here to keep it up tight and out of the way. And that should do that. See how that keeps that nice and tight there. Flush cut. Give yourself a nice, safe thing that won't try to gash your arm open. And let's see, what else we have pre-wired? We have the lighter, the cigarette lighter. So I have that guy ready to go. So I'll just plug that in as well. All right, now since I have this Flaming River removable steering wheel thing in temporarily, I might run it, we'll see. I'm gonna get that out of my way for now. Get our second hummus container full of screws that I'm pretty sure will work for everything from a mock-up. And it's time to get the gauges in. All right, let's see how this goes. This should go pretty easy actually. So we'll take our pre-wired stuff. So all of the gauge information is handled through this one Cat 5 wire. So that goes on, obviously, like so, boom. And then I have conveniently labeled these left turn signal. Let's see, what is my left? That's my left, okay. My righty tighty, lefty loosey. And that's just to light the LEDs in the stock housing. And then this is for the clock. This needs 12-volt power full time for the clock. So that's what I ran there. And that's it for the gauges. Well, looky there. It does. Let's get some screws into this thing. Is that enough? Oh, that's perfect. All right, so we could even put our steering wheel back on. And that's just, I do really like the Flaming River tilt column. This will be my driving position. Now it's time for center console goodness. Now this would be a great time for me to connect the vent ducts to the center here, but I want this done and I'll just have to wrestle with that later, but that's what you would do to the classic Auto Air. Here is the start button pigtail conveniently located for his pleasure. Quick description on how that works again. Remember when I showed you on the starter switch? On this one, it's simply power, starter, and then this gray one is the actual light. This is a lighted switch. It's very cool. So basically all you're doing is you're sending power to this one. I hit the ignition, this button right here, the ignition system, that activates this, and then all you do by hitting this is it just jumps over to the purple wire and sends power to the starter solenoid and does it. It's super simple, so don't overthink this starter. And I just put this 3-piece, 3-prong weather pack connector there, just literally to make that easy to get this in and out. And then this goes in like this, looking pretty good. Let's get some screws in this to stabilize it. And then we'll plug that in up into the classic Auto Air unit in a moment. Then this panel goes in, and we have our 2 convenient plugs through here. And then this will hold that into place. Let's get some screws into there. We need some help on the vents, but otherwise, oh boy. Hi Pinto, I'm glad you came out to join me. Pinto doesn't come out as much anymore. Yeah, I know. You gotta come out and hang out with me some more. It's cold out here and concrete's cold, even with her blanket. Not enough. Old grumpy girl, see ya. It is now time to put power to this thing. Whew, deep breath, okay. I have a camera on the inside to see if there's smoke or fire or flames. I don't know, it should be good. Whew. Positive terminal. Now this is the circuit for the terminator. I'm gonna do that last. Boom. Tighten this thing down. Not too tight, just in case I need to undo it. And then we'll put our discrete power to the fuel injection computer, the Holley computer. Oh my goodness. This is big. Okay. Whew. Let's go see how everything looks. Courtesy lights are on. These are the blue courtesy lights, the LEDs that I put in there. They're pretty cool, huh? And see how they work off of the stock Ford switches. Yeah, fancy. So I don't see anything, any smoke, any scary stuff. Let's run through some of the systems. Here we go. Geez, let's just do a quick check before we do anything. Headlights, they look like they're on. Let's see if the high beam switch works. Boom, high beam switch works, yeah! Okay, let's see, hazards. We're just doing baby steps at this, guys, because I'm scared and nervous. What else are we gonna do here? Let's just turn it to parking lights here. Actually, let's see what that looks like. It looks pretty good. Okay, let's turn the key. All right, let's turn the key on. So now the car should be on. This is getting real. Let's see, let's turn the actual car on, and that's why you'll see, oh, look at that. I forgot that I had wired the VHX dimmer in. Oh my gosh, all of these things are coming to life. This is so real right now. Fudge. Oh, I forgot to put my lights in this thing. Okay, I'll get that in a minute, but oh, geez Louise, this is too real, too good. Volts are showing good. Here, I have to set up the fuel center. I have to set everything up from scratch. Now, technically, I hit this. That arms, the Holley, the MSD, everything is armed and on. I don't hear any weird sparks or things complaining. This is the fuel pump. There's fluids and everything. I just tested the system a little while ago and it builds enough pressure. There's no leaks, everything. Geez, I guess let's try to start it. I don't think it'll start because there's just too many things that have to like get dialed, but let's hit the button and see what happens. Holy shit! No way! Important to keep your head, check for leaks. I can't right now, I can't. It runs. Holy moly. Oh. Got a little smoke here and there. It looks good. It sounds awesome! It's just too much, man! This is so good! Yeah! Oh. That should shut it off. Just give me a minute here. This has been a long time coming, man. This has been a long time, and this feels great. My heart hasn't felt this relieved and happy in a long, long time. I'm so stoked right now. God dang it. A good thing to do when you first start a car after 5 years and you have a junkyard engine and you have all of these things, these variables, you should check and make sure that it's not leaking or blowing up or doing anything bad. And there was some smoke, but I've spilled a bunch of stuff as I put it together. So that's kind of normal at this point, at least until I discover. But oh my God, it's too much. Let's see if we're leaking anything underneath. We're not. It looks good. I'm gonna stop crying here pretty quick. I have no shame. I don't even care. Power steering is not leaking. Brakes aren't leaking. Wow. Everything looks really, really quite good. Here are some huge fails that just happened. I only glanced at the oil pressure and it looked good, so let's check that again. So key is on, fuel. It's charging. It sounds ferocious. Wow. I did not expect that. And I'm a very happy man right now. Let me get my thoughts together and we'll wrap this up. So there you go. A huge milestone in this project, and actually in my life. This is 5.5 years to this moment right here of huge reward. And a lot of you guys have been along with me. You don't know the pain involved with this, but you've been there, so thank you. And for you new guys, welcome. And guess what? Videos from now on are finishing it and driving it. And that's so huge. Getting this thing out of the garage. I'm gonna drive it tomorrow. I'll shoot that video. But right now, I am going to just sit in here and appreciate this. Let's run through this one more time. I'm gonna end with it running because it sounds so good when a car, like you put it all together. You guys watched the Flowmaster X pipe I welded together and put the Outlaws on there. It's there, it's in, it's done. So let's, car on. I love this, everything's working. It's like, it just all worked. First time. Holly, and then the engine start button comes on, tilt wheel, fuel pump, engine start. Power steering even works. I mean, come on. Well, if you can hear me, until next time, enjoy your drive. Yes!